Hello, James and Phil here from the Sunderland Echo. Sunderland have just beaten Middlesbrough 1-0 at the Stadium of Light in the Championship. Chris Rigg with a superb backheel to win the game. That was a goal worthy of any fixture, I think.
Yeah, it was just a great moment. It's not very often you get like a genuine gasp in a football ground, isn't it? And it was just like that feeling of like he's going to score, or he's overran it, it's going out for a goal kick, and then just from nowhere this deft little backheel. I thought it was class, and yeah, it was a moment of magic, sort of worthy of winning any game. And I think it was tight. And Sunderland clearly didn't dominate the game, but I think after what happened last week, the way they managed the second half, I thought was super impressive. They had a lot more of the ball. They chose the right moments to attack, the right moments to sit off. I thought it was a really mature performance. Middlesbrough weren't terrible, they didn't do enough, and I think on balance, without dominating the game, I think someone did enough to win it. I think it was good.
And I have to say fair play to Chris Rigg as well, because I've fallen into the trap of trying to treat him like a 17-year-old, and he's clearly not. He's clearly 37. He's played like 600 games in the AFL. We were saying in the podcast midweek, local derby, Chris Rigg's been good, maybe take him out of the firing line, bring Alan Brown in. Obviously Alan Brown wasn't available, so that was sort of off the table, but then Chris Rigg goes and turns in a performance like that. 17 years old. A shout out as well to Joe Bellingham, who we forget is only 18 years old.
He was,
in that midfield is just stunning.
He was I gave him my man of the match in the highest rating. I thought that physically, he completely dominated his two opposite numbers in midfield. I thought he ran the game, and I thought what Sunderland did well today was they were really, really solid defensively while still getting forward, and I thought Job summed that up. He made big tackles in his own box, big headers, and yet he was always driving forward, carrying the ball, relieving pressure.
It was his interventions, wasn't it? It was his interventions.
And he played some nice passes today. He teed up Roberts for that one that was nearly a screamer from 20 odd yards. He teed up Mundell for that shot just before half time. I thought it was such an intelligence performance, and
rise beyond his years.
Yeah, he is. I think he's going under the radar, probably over the top a bit, but I think because of Rigg rightly getting the headlines, I think maybe Bellingham isn't quite getting the credit he deserves for his level of performance. I thought he ran that game today. I thought he was outstanding.
It's his second full season as well.
It's just exciting to be watching these two lads.
It is really right. Mike Smith says, have we got a master tactician in Reg? Obviously Regis Le Bris. No panic when they had the ball, late subs to stretch them, then final one to close the game out when they were pressing magic. I think what I would say on that is that against Plymouth, I thought you perhaps should have made a substitution slightly earlier. So it's good when you win, it's not so good when you lose. Those are just the sort of live and die.
Yeah, listen, I think you get a feel for a manager and how they do things pretty early on. It's pretty obvious that Le Bris isn't going to be a big substitution merchant. That's definitely not a thing. I don't know where that's come from.
A sub-merchant.
A sub-merchant, yeah. But you can tell, in contrast, Mowbray like to change it early, and you like to make big changes and almost shock the game and change the momentum. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It's the same with Le Bris. There are definitely times when we stand there saying, you should have changed it earlier. I'd like to see more. I think I'd say a couple of things
but that's going to be always have to be a loss, isn't it? Because that's definitely the way the narrative goes, isn't
definitely.
It?
The thing I would say about Le Bris is I think there's two things. One is, at the moment, he hasn't got loads of options on the bench, and I'm hoping that's something that starts to change in the next few weeks, because he hasn't got loads to work with, and that's one slight niggling worry. He's a bit strong, but I think that is part of it. I think what I would say about him tactically is I think defensively the structure is the best we've seen for a long time at Sunderland, and he deserves a huge amount of credit for that. The players are clearly buying in totally, and that's down to him and his management. Big tick. The one thing I would say is we haven't seen loads of flexibility yet. That's not a criticism, because they've won 5 games from 6, so we haven't had to see a lot of flexibility, but we haven't seen a huge amount in terms of the attack beyond the good counter-attacking, which has been very successful. So I'm not saying that as a criticism. I think he's been brilliant. Like I said, the players obviously love him, but I think there's still. I'd be interested to see how he manages over the course of a 46-game season, how he presents different things, introduces different ideas.
And in fairness, Sunderland haven't really come up against an opponent yet where you think oh my God, we need 5 at the back or something.
Yeah, definitely. Or they haven't come up against the game we saw a lot last year where teams just put 10 men behind the ball and slow it down, and it's going to be really interesting to see whether Sunderland are ready for that. So I think he's done brilliantly so far, but I think it's a little bit early in terms of seeing what else he's got in the toolbox as well.
This next question comes from Twitter. Muncaster Gary says, very impressive start to the season. Can we get better? A few players still to reach their potential, and January window ahead. Where do you think we should and could strengthen? I think we can get better.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, we haven't seen. I still think we've got loads to see from this team. I think that the games have all been broadly similar in how Sunderland have approached it, and so far it's worked really well. I think there's so much more. I would say it 2 ways they can get better. I do think that using our experience of the last 3 years or so, we also have to be realistic and acknowledge that with some of these young players, there's also going to be a dip at some point.
Yeah.
Like we have been here through before where they've been brilliant at the start of the season.
Well, we were talking about that Blackburn game towards the back end of last season.
Yeah.
Like how short a time ago that is.
It's a long winter. The pitches get worse. It gets a little bit more difficult, and it'll be new experiences for some of these players. So I think there will be a dip, and that's when that depth, which we were just talking about, is going to be so important. And I think with players like Isidore coming on strong, Salih, Samed coming into the mix, I think that's kind of going to define whether Sunderland can keep this up. And I think I'm so excited about this team. I mean, Mundell, Fly, and Bellingham we've talked about. I think we're just going to pretend that didn't happen, that my iPhone did not reach maximum storage, that was a very obvious C that we've just put in. We've just put in the middle of the video. So yeah, I was just saying that I think there is more to come from this team, but I also think we have to be realistic that there will be little dips as well during the season as well. And I think the big thing is going to be how those players still come into the group. Samed, Isidore, I think they're going to have to pick up the slack at some point, and that's going to be a kind of a big part of the season.
What I was just about to say before the camera cut out is that obviously Watford next weekend, but then the week after that you've got Derby on the Tuesday, and then it's Leeds, I think, on the Friday night at the Stadium. So that is a big test. Derby are a decent side. Leeds we know are dangerous. So I feel like that'll tell us quite a bit. You know, Sunderland might draw one and lose one of those games, and it's not the end of the world by any means, but I think that'll give us an idea of where Sunderland are at.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing I would say just on the final point in terms of January, the one thing I would say is that Sunderland are going to be in a strong position in January, and that they're not going to be under any pressure to sell any of these players when the big teams come in from them. Obviously the one slight contractual concern at the moment is Neil and Cirk, and he'll have 18 months at that point, but hopefully, you know, that's something by that point where they're extended. But I feel pretty good about that. The question is whether Sunderland really go for it in January. That's a totally different debate.
Just on that January thing, I think for me, I saw enough and heard enough noises in the summer to suggest that Sunderland did some decent business on deadline day, but there was perhaps another gear that they were trying to get to that they couldn't. There was a couple of failed things, you know, things that didn't quite come off. Obviously, January is a different kettle of fish because those prices could go even higher, and we know Sunderland won't take their eyes off. But for me, I'm quite relaxed in the sense that I feel like there's a willingness from the club to spend money. Obviously, it's quite easy to be relaxed when you've run 5 from 6.
Well, and I think that as well, we have seen with, like, specifically with Metham and Samed, they're two deals that, you know, those players, we might not see them again. It's for this season only. Hopefully they'll stay in the Premier League with Sunderland next year. But my point being, I think we've seen that they're prepared to sort of do some short-term deals to improve the team in January. So I feel fairly optimistic about that. But I tell you what, that's a hell of a long way off. But,
one of the questions that we had on Twitter was, how long can Sunderland actually keep hold of Chris Rigg if he continues to play like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's an obvious question, which is not very long if he's this good, because there's going to be some stupid bids coming.
Unless Sunderland get to the Premier League, which I would say is possibly.
But I mean, I don't think there's any short to medium term issue, is there? The whole point he stayed when he could have signed for any club he wanted in the last 2 summers was because he wanted to play Championship football with Sunderland. He's playing every week. He's not going to drop out of the team anytime soon. Maybe for the odd game every now and then. He's playing. He loves it. The fans love him. He's already turned down 2 much better opportunities, or more sensible opportunities to leave, if you like. Why would he do it now?
And it's actually easy to forget, isn't it, that as well as signing his professional deal this summer, obviously last summer
that's
as well,
exactly what I mean.
He had you know, offers, and he could have left actually easier really because he was signing a scholarship.
That's exactly what I mean. It would have been easier to go then. So I'm not too worried about that in the short to medium term.
And I think what we have to say about Chris Rigg as well is that he's got a great deal of respect from the fans. We've written about it. You know, it's our understanding that it's one of the reasons he stayed. Obviously, Sunderland have had to persuade him to stay as well in terms of money, in terms of pathway, in terms of playing him. But we have all of those sort of cards in our hands. We, at the moment, seemingly are the best place for his development, especially when Sunderland are winning games in the Championship.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just enjoy it.
Enjoy it while you're
and I think, realistically, if Sunderland don't get the Premier League in the next couple of years, he's off for an absolutely huge sum. And I think that's how it is.
And it's one of those where, like, and I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I don't want to sort of sell our players before we've achieved anything or anything. But like the sale of a Chris Rigg or a Job, that could really kick this club on until, in terms of the model, into the next sort of stratosphere. I know people maybe thought that would happen with the Ross Stewart and Jack Clark deals. It hasn't quite mapped out, but I genuinely feel like a Rigg or a Bellingham could be huge.
And I think we should enjoy it, because I think in 10 years' time we might look back and laugh that we were watching.
When Chris Rigg's played for Bayern Munich in the Champions League.
I think we could look back and laugh that we watched Bellingham, Rigg and Neil as a midfield three week in, week out. So let's enjoy it. A couple of closing remarks from me, just things I want to put out. I thought Metham's debut was excellent.
Unbelievable. It's about as good a debut you could
Premier League player, international, you expect him to be like not sort of stressed out or flustered by coming into a game like this, but I thought he was excellent. What a great thing to have that kind of centre half in the building. I thought he was excellent. I just thought we should shout out Patrick Roberts again, who I think has been really strong this season, working his socks off, constant threat. What a treat to watch him back being.
Well, we said on the podcast, or you pointed out on the podcast, that pretty much every Sunderland goal this season, Patrick Roberts has had an involvement with. Obviously, Chris Rigg, individual skill, got the back heel. We watched the replay back in the stadium. I turned to you and said that sort of proves what you say, because it was Patrick Roberts down the right with the ball in.
Yeah.
Not an assist, not a second assist even, but it's him penetrating down the right and putting that ball in.
I think we'll leave it there. All I've got left to say is how are the mid-block?
How are the mid-block, yes. Yes. How are Regis Le Bris Mackhams?
Thank you for being patient with us during our technological issues.
It's excitement, that's what it is.
Yeah, but how are the mid-block?